Hello, and welcome back to Sweep the League, the podcast. It's your boy Mark, aka Stats, and me and Rock are helming the ship tonight. But best love to Rudy, the ravishing one, who is on vacation right now. Enjoy that vacation, brother. Can't wait to have you back. Derek doing the basketball thing, Shemaya on the beat doing the music thing. But Rock, you and I, we've got this. What's up, man?
Nothing much, man. I'm excited, get some WNBA talk, get educated on some stuff with our special guest. It should be a fun night.
Absolutely, man. You heard it from The Rock. You heard it from Stats. But as you know, we've got a very special guest tonight. We're blessed with royalty tonight. We have got the Queen of Hoop with us, Megan Price. And rather than us just kind of explaining what she's all about, let's let her do that. So, Megan, welcome to Sweep the League podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. And I wouldn't necessarily say I'm royalty. One of my radio shows that I do kind of gave me that nickname, and it's the Queen of Hoop. You can find me all over the place under that name. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My Twitter is growing every single day. So I just reached 1,000 followers yesterday. And I've only been on there for like 6 months. So that was kind of a little milestone for me. I talk women's basketball, but I talk all basketball. I also have another show on Thursdays called The Sip Off. And it's a play on the tip off. We have drinks, we talk basketball, and it's me and two of my best friends. And we talk all basketball, high school, college, international, women's, men's, it doesn't matter. And we drink all along the whole hour or so. And then I also do a show on Wednesdays on 806 Sports. And you can find that on Facebook, but they are a local station here in Amarillo. You can find me on 13:30 a.m. at 9:30 in the morning. Every Wednesday, I do a Women's Wednesday special.
Well, there you go. Thank you, Megan. I couldn't have said it any better, like, honestly.
Oh, I have one more. I have another show actually too.
Ooh,
I have
okay, go ahead.
Three Chicks in a Pod is on Tuesdays, and we're a 30-minute show, and we are the only all-female cast on Sideline Sports. So it's myself and two other ladies, and we pick up a pretty serious topic for the first part of the show, and then we end on a positive note. But the past month we've been talking about Title IX, we've been talking about the women's national soccer team. So anything that kind of ruffles some feathers in the sports world, we're going to talk about it.
But there you go. You heard it from Megan herself. But tonight, we have got a tall task for us. We're going to talk about some WNBA and the contending teams in the top four. So, Megan, this show is about you. This show is your floor. You can go ahead and bring us in. We got some notes like we talked about on some of these teams, but go ahead and start wherever you'd like. Which is there a team that has stuck out the most to you out of these four? I mean, all of them are contenders, but is there one that has really just leapt out of the stat sheet for you?
Well, actually, the one and only team that's clinched today, and that's the Chicago Sky. And they're really starting to look like they're going to be able to repeat, possibly as champions. Like I said, they're the reigning defending champs at the moment. Seems like every time Candace Parker hits the floor, she's just a walking double-double. It doesn't matter that it's year 14 or 15. Like, she's still putting up ridiculous numbers. And then you have the Vanderquigs over there, which is Courtney Vandersloot and then Allie Quigley. They're a married couple, but they play on the same team. They complement each other. What I love about Courtney Vandersloot is, I got to quote Becky Hammon, who is, y'all are San Antonio fans, correct? So hopefully y'all love Becky as much as I do. She said that there was nobody else, and, she coaches men, women, doesn't matter. But she said that there was nobody like Courtney that has the same court vision as her. Like, she's an astronomical point guard. She's very unselfish. She's not even leading the league in assists this year, which is kind of shocking. But I think that is indicative to how good Chicago is. Like, everybody's putting up they're putting up numbers. Everybody's putting up numbers. Everybody's putting up double-digit numbers, but they're not just having like extreme games. You're not counting on just Candace to put up 30 points. They're not just counting on Kalia Copper to put up 25 points. Like, everybody's putting up like 15 to 20 points, and and they're just working together as a team. And to me, that's pretty scary, because when they went into the playoffs last season, they were a 500 team. This year, they're the best team in the league. They're 20-6. And like I said, they clinched today. They beat Seattle 78-74. And I don't know if you guys have kept up with Seattle at all this year. Sue Birds last year. You got Breanna Stewart, who's in the MVP running. You have Jewel Lloyd, who is actually their core player. She's a part of the Notre Dame dynasty. And they picked up Tina Charles from the Mercury mid-season. So I thought that was a huge pickup for them. She's getting older in her career, later in her career. And I think what was going on with the Mercury because of what's going on with BG. And then there's some coaching struggles over there in Phoenix as well. I think that she just didn't physically or mentally want to be the leader of the team anymore. Like, I don't think she can physically do it anymore. And so she needed to go somewhere where she was more of a role player. So I think, going to Seattle was probably the right fit.
And real quick question regarding the Seattle Storm. So I did a little bit of research on this team. They're the number one defense in the WNBA. I mean, usually defense plays a lot into any sport involved, but right. I think this one stuck out the most. Did they make a leap from last season in that department, or have they always been like a really good defense?
I think that they've always been a good defense, but the difference is Breanna Stewart, and because she's the one that's averaging 3 steals a game. So, which is just incredible. And she didn't finish out the last season. Like, she missed the last 3 weeks of the season. She injured her foot pretty seriously. She didn't make it to the playoffs. So I think that is a huge difference right there. When you're averaging 3 steals a game, you're missed.
Yeah, and going back to about the Sky, you mentioned that they're the favorite. Vegas does have them as a second favorite behind the Aces. Even
right.
though you've been saying how dominant they've been. What would it mean if the Aces actually pulled out the title in Becky's first year? Like, has there been anything like that you've seen in your watching the WNBA? Has there been a coach like that? And also, I want to add, if the Chicago was going to go back to back, when was the last time a team went back to back and showed a dominance that you just mentioned?
Okay, well, to begin with, as far as the back-to-back wins, I think you have to go to the very inception of the league and talk about the Houston Comets. They had 4 back-to-back, and no team has ever done that. Houston Comets have not existed since 2009, and they're still tied for first on most championships. Seattle has 4. They have 4, and Minnesota has 4 as well. So, for a team that hasn't existed in 13 years and they're still tied for first, I think that's the team you got to hold in the hierarchy right there as far as that. Now Seattle, I think that we've seen them be dominant before. The way they finished the season last year, they were the number 2 seed. But Vegas, when Becky started, she had the best start in the history of the league. I can't remember within the first 15 games. So I think when they brought her on, the mood was title or bust. So I don't know if it's necessarily surprising if they were to win or make it to the finals. They already made it to the semis last season, and they needed that edge to push them over. And that's what Becky is. So I agree with what Vegas has as far as who should be favored. And I think it should be Vegas, but Chicago is looking so dominant. I think you can't ignore it.
Yeah, I mean, Chicago's second most points in the WNBA, 5th best defense in the WNBA, so they're right up there in both departments. Regarding Becky, though, with the Aces, what do you think has been the biggest contribution? Like, what do you think she's brought the most to the table in her reign compared to last season's reign?
Oh, that's tough because their former coach is Bill Lambier. And, as you know, he's just not only a legendary coach, but a legendary player. And I think he just brings a level of toughness. And so when going forward, when they vetted Becky for this job, I think that's what they were looking for. Somebody that could be able to handle the squad, not in the same way that Bill does, but they're a tough squad. They're scrappy. They're very physical. And even though they don't have Liz Cambage anymore, so their size is depleted some. They have Dearica Hamby and they have Asia Wilson. And despite not having a real true center, they're both eating in the lane. So I think that they were looking for somebody that could handle the attitudes that come along with those ladies, and even come along with Bill Lambier. And so for Becky to have trained under Pop, I think that that's somebody who can manage attitudes for sure and make it all about the team. And I think that's the difference this year.
Yeah. And to continue on with some WNBA talk, with the playoffs approaching and the season coming near to end, Asia Wilson is a favorite for MVP. Brianna Stewart's right there. Who do you feel like should be deservedly MVP?
Oh, I love that you brought this up. I was just having this conversation with my significant other right before the show started. And while maybe 5 games ago, I would have said, yeah, it's between Stewie, it's between Asia. And it's kind of like a toss up between the two. And then Kelsey Plum kind of came up between the two. And right now she's leading the league in 3-pointers. She just passed Becky Hammon for most threes for the franchise because Vegas is the former Stars. So same franchise. And, I really feel like that, at one point she wasn't leading in points. She's second in points. So, it's between a toss up between those 3. And then when Kelsey won the All-Star MVP, and that's a whole different topic. The trophy and all the dilemma with all that. But that performance that she had, like nobody's talking about, this is her first All-Star appearance and she put up 30 plus points. Like that's huge. So I think Kelsey's in there.
Would you say Kelsey is like your pick if you had to make a pick today?
Yes, but that's tough because, man, we're talking Asia and Stewie. Yeah. So, I mean, it's tough because they're averaging, like Stewie's averaging the most points, almost 23 points a game. Asia's leading in boards. So it's kind of like your preference and type of player because their points are so close. The difference is going to be assists and the difference is going to be rebounds. You're going to get more of a defensive player out of Asia. So if you have a preference for defensive players, you're probably going to lean towards Stewie or Asia. So it's more preference, but all 3 of those ladies are deserving. So I would say Kelsey for me, just because of the season that she's having. Like she's just been so exciting to watch.
So I have to ask, who was your favorite team? And did you have a team growing up that you're just a fan of? And then who's your favorite player overall? I mean, personally, my favorite player is Sabrina. I'm going to mispronounce her name. Anausu, if I'm not saying it right. I've watched her since Oregon, and she's just a killer on the court, dropping triple doubles left and right from her Oregon days. I just love watching her play for the Liberty. And I just want to know, who's your favorite player in your team that you just root for?
Okay, so I'll do growing up who my favorite was, and that's Sheryl Swoopes because I mean she's local. I lived in Wolford, which is right outside of Lubbock, and so I lived in the area when she won those NCAA titles. And then whenever the dream team came about in 96, I was 11 years old and I was playing basketball and I was going to basketball camps every single summer. And at that time it was hard to imagine what you could do beyond going and playing for the national team. And obviously I'm not talented enough to be on the court still, but, dreaming as a kid, thinking like, at that time there was no national or there was no league and no professional league. And so, for me, it was Sheryl Swoopes, but I got to say the greatest player of all time now is Diana Taurasi, in my opinion. But I'm now a Dallas fan because I do media for them. And Alicia Gray is my favorite player on that team. She is not the best player on that team. They've got Arike Ugumbawale, and she's amazing. She's from Notre Dame as well, but Alicia Gray's from South Carolina. She played for Dawn Staley, and she was a part of the 3-on-3 team that got gold medals this past summer. So I think she's incredibly scrappy. She's a very physical player, and she's my favorite.
Got you. And you mentioned the name Dawn Staley. So Rudy wrote an article for Project Spurs. It was his first article. And you know how there's a whole rumors about Greg Popovich when he's going to retire, who's going to be his replacement. He mentioned Dawn Staley as a possible replacement. Could you see her make that possible jump from the WA to the NBA, going from, not WNBA, from the college ranks to NBA? Could you see her making that big of a jump? And do you think she would fit in right with the Spurs culture and system?
So last year she actually interviewed before she signed the contract. She signed a $22 million extension with South Carolina. So, currently she's not going anywhere, but I don't think Popovich is going anywhere for a few years either. So I think we get probably 3 seasons, maybe 4 seasons left out of Popovich. That's just kind of my personal opinion on it. But I would have loved to have seen Becky take it over, but she was ready to be a head coach right then. And so I don't blame her for moving over to the W. I think Dawn is definitely could be a part of that winning culture that San Antonio is about. And I would love to see that. She actually interviewed for a couple of NBA jobs last season when Becky was interviewing. I can't remember. It was either Portland or Orlando. And I think the Washington job as
Becky,
well. So, but I think that's a blessing in disguise, actually, that she didn't get those jobs, even though at the time I was really disappointed because she had been with us for 6 seasons at the time. I felt like she was the most experienced. She was a summer league champion. Like, I felt like she was the one that was most deserving. But I would rather see her go somewhere and be successful, because if you're the first female coach to go, if you're the first female to be a head coach in the NBA, and then you take over a team like Orlando and y'all are losing constantly, you're going to become a scapegoat, and they're going to say, obviously, well, maybe we shouldn't have crossed over and hired a female. Whereas if she goes to Vegas like she did and she's successful and it's a stepping stone and she ends up coming back to the NBA, I think the process is better, but I would have loved to have seen Becky get a head coaching job. But also, Portland's kind of a dumpster fire this past season too. So I'm kind of glad she didn't end up there, even though they have a couple of pieces I like. Obviously, I'm a Dame fan. I'm a huge Anthony Simmons fan. So I love his development over the last 2 years. So.
Yeah, going to sticking around actually with Becky here. So she had interviewed for the Milwaukee Bucks head coach job before they ended up going with Mike Budenholzer. Do you think she would have succeeded in that role because of just that next level that team ended up taking?
Okay, so I'm not a Budenholzer fan, even though he is a part of the Popovich coaching tree. I just think that he does. Shock face, right? I'm just not the biggest Budenholzer fan. I don't think he adjusts very well. I think he has a game plan going into the game, and that's it. And they're going to stick to it. And the only time I ever seen him adjust was in the finals. So obviously, he did it when it mattered. They ended up winning. I think that Becky. I think she could have had success, but I think part of the reason she had success in San Antonio is she knew those players. She knew Tony Parker really well. Like, they knew each other from international play. They knew her, they respected her, and they bought into her being a part of their team. So I think it is dependent on whether that team would have been willing to buy into her system and buy into taking direction from a female. So if so, absolutely, because I feel like her skill level is there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think we did a pretty solid job covering some WNBA stuff. Are there any other topics, any other stories that you want to touch on? I mean, there's a lot going on with free agency.
Right.
Brittney Griner.
You said what?
The Brittney Griner situation. I was going to ask you, what's your kind of, thoughts on it? I mean, the whole situation itself, I just want to hear how you feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me preface it with just kind of a little backstory with what's going on, because I think some people read stuff online and they see stuff on Facebook, and I don't think they have a really good overview of what's really happening. And not to say that I'm an expert on it. The only thing any of us really know is what they're telling us. So, nobody really knows unless you're in that country and you're a part of what's going on. But she pled guilty to having a vape pen. Now, she does have a prescription for it there in Arizona. Obviously, it's legal there in Arizona. And the day before she actually tried to come home, and before she got arrested, she had actually turned her notice into the team and said that she would not be playing this season. It would have been her 7th season with this team. So I think that plays a factor into it. 2 weeks later, they decided to invade Ukraine. And they made a comment, Putin made a comment that the reason that they were doing that is because Ukraine openly supports a homosexual lifestyle. And obviously, Brittney, she's gay. She is an African-American woman. So she's in a place that hates her. And so I'm not ready to just sit there and say she's all the way guilty, even with the guilty plea that she did. It was strategic. It's what she had to do in order for a prisoner exchange to happen. But I just have a kind of a gut feeling that because the way she pled, she said she was guilty without intent. So I think she had been traveling with this probably the entire time, going back and forth between Russia and here, that she was used to doing that. I mean, obviously she got in the country with it. They didn't have a problem with her bringing it in. They had a problem with her trying to go home with it. And so I felt like that was very strategic. Also, this is the same government that murdered her team owner a couple of years ago. I don't know if y'all saw the 60-minute interview that Sue Bird did, but she talks about it in there, like that government killed her team owner. So this is a very stressful situation. I can't imagine what she's going through, but I saw an article earlier this week that Roy Jones Jr., former boxer who has dual citizenship in Russia and America, has actually reached out to his contacts there in Russia. And so he'll be traveling there this week, along with the New Mexican governor, a former governor or congressman. He's going to go there too. He's also had some dealings with Russia and was successful. And so hopefully they can expedite this prisoner exchange situation and get her home safely. She seems better. I want to say, like last week, what we saw her in court, she seems like she's in a little bit better mental health. She was smiling somewhat. She was holding up a picture of the ladies at the All-Star game wearing her jersey. So instead of the first couple of times, the first arrest photos we seen or her going to court, she looked like a deer in headlights. She looked terrified. So it doesn't necessarily, maybe her mental health is in the right place at this moment, but the average person there in Russia, if you get caught with a vape pen and you actually get in trouble for it, you're released after 15 days. Yes, you have up to 10 years. And I don't know if it's different because she's not a citizen there. So if they're able to charge her more because she's not a citizen there, maybe so. And that's why she's looking at up to 10 years. But if she would have fought it, the prisoner exchange was a no-go whatsoever. So she had to plead guilty in order to come home.
Wow, I didn't know all that in the back stuff. I like you said, I kind of read around and skimmed through the news that you see on ESPN. But I mean, I know she had pled guilty to it. I mean, I personally just think it's dumb what Russia's doing. I mean, didn't do anything relatively wrong. Like you said, it's 15 days. She's just like any other human. It's not like she's special or anything. And it's like, come on, man, like you just got to let it go. I mean, she's just wanting to go home. She wasn't causing any harm.
Right. And which, don't get me wrong, I'm not condoning taking drugs over to another country. And that that's breaking the law. But I will say that I think she was used to doing it. I think she's never been in trouble with it before. And as long as she was playing for their team, they were cool with it. But then she hands in her notice and they're like, oh, okay, that's going to be a problem. And oh, well, we're going to invade Ukraine. And we know that, the United States is a big part of NATO. Like they're the main factor of NATO, and they didn't want us to be involved. They threatened us that if we got involved, that they were literally going to bomb us. So, I felt like that's probably a factor. And then this arms dealer that they want in exchange for her, he's like a hero over there. I mean, his kill number has to be like 300 plus, like this is an awful guy and we have him and they want him. So this is what they can do in order to get him. And while like I said, I don't condone what she did, but I don't think she had that intent, I think that it was just something that she was used to doing, that she'd never been in trouble for. It's something that she does for pain management. And And if you don't know, Lauren Jackson, who is one of the founders of the WNBA, also, she actually, and she's playing for the Australian national team, and she's like 42 now. She was able to come back to playing professionally again because she's been using cannabis as pain management. So, it does have some positive effects for athletes or people with pain. So I'm not against her using it. You got to know where you're at and what you're doing. And when you're across country lines, like they can do what they want with you.
For sure.
Yeah, heavily political for sure with just what's going on right now in the world. So, yeah, I know we're getting close to the end here, but is there one last thing you'd like to say, or like one last quick story you want to touch on?
I guess I wanted to ask you guys kind of what your thoughts are on KD. He's requested a trade. But we've also seen the commissioner come out and say, Adam Silver say that he didn't really like how KD had requested a trade. Where do you think he ends up? Who do you have to give up in order for him to end up at that spot? He's listed Miami and Phoenix at the top of his trade list. Obviously, Golden State was still mentioned. My personal opinion, I think he fits the best with Golden State again, but then that means that they would have to trade away their young core that we've seen do so well. They would have to include Jordan Poole in that. No matter what trade scenario they do, they have to include Jordan Poole. And I think that's a mistake. So I'm not sure. I feel like, my personal opinion, I think he should stay in Brooklyn. But as we've seen out of KD before, he doesn't necessarily stick it out when it gets rough.
Rock, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree with you. I think he's going to end up just staying in Brooklyn because none of the trade packages really make sense. I mean, you had Gobert go for multiple firsts, so imagine what KD's going to go to. Just as what his trade value is. I saw a report today by Mark Stein, and there was a rumor saying that the Jazz want 7 picks for Donovan Mitchell. If that's Donovan Mitchell, what are you going to get for KD? You have those armchair GMs on Twitter and all social media saying, "Oh, we'll just trade 2 players and a couple players for KD." No, you're getting arguably the best scorer ever in NBA history. But that whole Sun situation, it's kind of funny to me that DeAndre Ayton got his way and they had to pay him after all, and now it's like an awkward situation. You have to live through. You're like, "Oh, we didn't really want to pay you, but you're still here." It's like kind of funny to think about. But the one team that
I think Aiden got to look at himself in the mirror and make sure it's a 7-foot mirror so that he knows exactly how tall he is, and remind himself that he can dunk the ball. I need some enthusiasm out of Aiden. I think he has, there were rumors that he would come to San Antonio, and I felt like that would have been a great place for him because, with DeJounte, obviously, if DeJounte still would have been there, we need a dominant center. I like Jakob, but I think that Ayton is a little lazy, and I think that's something that Pop could definitely work out of him, and we would see him be a much more dominant center.
Yeah, yeah, and I think Ayton would easily be the face of the Spurs at that point.
Oh yeah, dude, 100%.
Just he's been looking. Yeah.
Can you imagine him and DeJounte together with the pieces that we had? I was so irritated with how DeJounte phrased it like that. He called it a rebuild, and it wasn't a rebuild if he would have been there. You have Keldon Johnson, who's a gold medalist. You have Devin Vassell, who would have been a third-year player, whose development has been awesome. You have Jakob Poeltl, which he could have been replaced. Like I said, we need a more dominant center, but Jakob, he does get you some points. I think he averaged 13.9 last year and almost double boards. So, he is capable, but you want someone that's a little more dominant. But if you would have had DeJounte there, that's not a rebuild, that's a retool. And so I hated how he phrased it. Now we got to blow it up and it is a rebuild. So here we go.
Yeah, but I think that ultimately fell on DJ too, because he told them that, hey, I'm not going to sign big for
right. Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, so it's just.
I think we would have paid him if we paid Keldon $80 million. We definitely would have paid him whatever he wanted. I feel like.
Yeah, but that's the thing. He
didn't want to stick it out, and I hated how he put it like that. It's because I'm a diehard Spurs fan, so obviously I'm going to believe in the franchise before I believe in the player that exits, and so you probably know what my thoughts are about Kawhi, but. I think that I would have respected DeJounte more if he would have just said, I don't want to be here anymore. And so I'm not going to be. And, it would have hurt a little bit at first, but, I think honesty takes you a long way, and just kind of keep it real. Like, no, I didn't want to be here anymore. I appreciate the time and the development that you guys gave me, and I'm moving on.
Yeah,
Because I feel like that's what we got out of DeRozan. He played his contract out, and then he was like, "Hey guys, I'm gonna enter free agency, and I'm gonna go on my way." I respected that. I have no qualms with DeRozan leaving.
Yeah, I thought he was just a perennial Spur, just that guy, like a great type of player that the Spurs organization appreciates, guy who wants to be there too, but just not all the pieces were in place for that. And I thought the organization could have handled his departure and the handling of LaMarcus's departure a little better. Just like, I feel like they could have gotten more rather than just kind of letting him. Yeah. But that's probably a whole other podcast too. But
right. I was ready for LA to go. He just, for what we were paying him, I felt like he was a much better in Brooklyn. He's an excellent role player. Like, he looks great over there, and like that's the right spot for him, but not for what we were paying him and not for what we were expecting out of him,
Yeah, his production was declining, but character wise, he was a good
absolutely no great guy.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Megan, I think we're about out of time here, but thank you for being part of the Sweep the League podcast. Is there any let the folks know where they could find you again?
Okay, awesome. Like I said before, you guys can just search Queen of Hoop. You can find me on Twitter. I'm super active on Facebook. Most of my shows are on Facebook, or Megan Price. You can either add me, or almost all my sports posts are public, so you can comment on there without adding me. You can find me on 806 Sports on Wednesday mornings. Mondays and Wednesdays, you can find me on Sports Arena. On Tuesdays, you can find me on 3 Chicks in a Pod. And on Thursdays, you can find me on the Sip Off. Don't forget your drinks for that one.
Definitely not. Rock, why don't you say adios, my brother?
Yeah, if you ever want to link up with me, talk some sports, talk some culture, anything, you can find me at Rock Jr. on Twitter. But I think I'm gonna be making a little special appearance on the Megan show Sip Off. I might bring some cocktails to the party. So
absolutely,
I'll be hitting that up, Mark. I'll send pictures.
Oh, heck yeah. You got it. You heard the Rock. You heard Megan. You can follow me on Twitter at MarkTheMC, MarkTH, 3 3s, no E's, capital M, capital C. Check us all out. Thank you all for tuning in for Sweep the League podcast. We do this every week. We're available all over the place. Just continue to be cool, y'all, and thank you.